The Tightrope of Betrayal. Chapter 1. The Knife Thrower's Show. The most insidious thing about betrayal. It begins innocuously. That first telltale moment when something in your perfectly ordered life starts to sound discordant, like a piano with a broken hammer. Jack Harrison, 22 years in Army Special Forces with a Purple Heart from the blood-soaked sands of Fallujah, sensed that dissonance when his 9-year-old son Thomas mentioned the Spanish knife thrower during Tuesday night pot roast. Or perhaps it had started even earlier. But Jack's world truly began to crumble on that sweltering Sunday afternoon at the Corona Circus, which had unfurled its garish striped canopy on the outskirts of Phoenix. Something's off, something's goddamn wrong. The old military intuition, the same one that had kept him alive from Fallujah to Mosul, prickled between his shoulder blades like phantom shrapnel. Jack sat in the uppermost row of the big top, Diamondback's cap pulled low over his steel-gray eyes, making himself invisible. From this vantage point, he watched his wife rise from her seat in the third row. The spotlight captured her like a reconnaissance flare, and she sauntered toward the center ring, hips swaying in a crimson dress he'd never seen before. Antonio Martinez, 36 years old, immigrant from Seville, Spain, star attraction of Corona Circus. Jack had memorized the man's file. 3 weeks of surveillance had yielded quite the dossier. Martinez had appeared in the States 5 years ago when his country's economy took a nosedive. Instead of weathering the storm at home, he'd fled toward American opportunity. Now he stood centering in his midnight blue costume adorned with gold embroidery, peacocking like a matador, with a smile that made Jack's trigger finger itch. Ladies and gentlemen, his accent was deliberately thickened, turning each syllable into an exotic melody. Tonight we need a special assistant for our death-defying finale, someone with real courage in their veins, someone willing to trust me completely. You knew, you bastard, knew she'd be here, just like every damn Sunday for the past 3 months. Thomas and Sarah, Jack's pride and joy, his personal infantry in the war against post-retirement emptiness, sat beside their mother's now-empty seat, eyes wide with anticipation. Sarah, his little princess with her sandy pigtails, clutched her brother's hand tightly. Thomas, all lean limbs and determined jaw at 9 years old, was trying to maintain a facade of cool indifference, but his white knuckles betrayed him. Linda walked toward the ring and time stretched like taffy on a summer sidewalk. Jack observed everything with the heightened clarity that precedes combat. Beads of sweat on Martinez's neck, the gleam of throwing knives arranged on a velvet-draped table, the slight flush creeping up his wife's neck. She wasn't afraid. No. He knew that expression too well. It was the same look she'd worn on their first date, when they'd stolen away under the New Mexico stars. She wants him. Christ almighty, she really wants him. Allow me to introduce myself to those seeing me for the first time, Martinez bowed theatrically, taking Linda's hand. Antonio Martinez, 7th-generation circus performer. My family has been throwing knives since the golden age of Spanish courts. Bullshit. Jack knew the truth, average kid from a Seville suburb who learned to juggle in the streets and got lucky with a circus school scholarship. But the audience swallowed his European mystique like cotton candy. The wooden wheel at center ring resembled something from the Spanish Inquisition. It rotated slowly, bearings groaning under the weight of expectation. Assistants, twin brothers with matching sequin vests, efficiently strapped Linda to the wheel with leather restraints. Her arms and legs formed a perfect X. Don't worry, beautiful lady, Martinez retreated 10 paces, casually flipping a knife. I've never missed. Well, at least not fatally. Not in America anyway. Nervous laughter rippled through the tent. Music swelled, classical, dramatic, spine-tingling. The first knife cut a silver arc through the dusty air and buried itself in the wood an inch from Linda's right ear. She didn't even blink. She's practiced this. Jesus Christ, she's rehearsed with him. The knives flew one after another, inching closer to Linda's body, sketching a silver silhouette around her. The crowd gasped and applauded. Jack watched his wife close her eyes, surrendering to the music and motion. A slight smile played across her lips, one he hadn't seen directed at him in well over a year. She was genuinely enjoying this dance of danger with her Spanish paramour, while her battle-scarred husband had become just another piece of aging furniture at home. When the act concluded, Martinez helped Linda down from the wheel. Her knees trembled slightly, her cheeks flushed with color. He whispered something in her ear, and she laughed softly, that intimate laugh that had once been reserved for Jack alone. "Mommy was so brave," Sarah bounced excitedly as they walked toward the exit, "like a real superhero." "Better than any superhero," Thomas agreed, his voice tinged with awe. "Like one of those ninja warriors." Martinez caught up with them at the exit. His midnight blue costume now looked merely expensive rather than magical in the evening light. "Please, allow me to treat your wonderful children to dinner," he smiled at Linda. "As thanks for your assistance in my show, Charlie's Diner across the street makes excellent cheeseburgers." Linda didn't hesitate. "Of course, that's very kind of you." The diner smelled of sizzling beef and French fries. Thomas and Sarah settled by the window, devouring double cheeseburgers and chocolate milkshakes. Martinez was generous, ordering everything the children requested. "Wait here, kids. The hostess will watch over you." He placed his hand on Linda's shoulder. "Your mother and I need to discuss details for next week's performance. Something special. We'll be back in 30 minutes. They walked toward the circus. Thomas and Sarah watched through the window as their mother gesticulated animatedly while talking with Martinez. Then they disappeared behind the tent. A full hour passed before Linda returned, flushed, hair slightly disheveled, eyes bright with secret satisfaction. Next Sunday, Jack would return to the circus. But his wife and children wouldn't know about it. Something told him the knife-throwing act wasn't the only performance in Señor Martinez's repertoire. After all, Jack Harrison knew a few tricks himself, and his skills were far deadlier than circus illusions. Chapter 2: Suspicion. You don't notice changes in a woman all at once. They accumulate gradually, like radiation, invisible to the naked eye until suddenly your intuition's Geiger counter starts screaming. Jack Harrison spotted the first signs in early May, when Linda returned from the mall with a bag from Victoria's Secret. She'd never worn lace underwear before, claimed it irritated her skin. To hell with the lingerie. It was her eyes. They sparkled like a teenager who'd snuck out to a midnight concert. He sat at the kitchen table, sorting through cell phone bills. Old military habit ingrained through decades of service, always check the details. Details could save your life or expose a lie. Linda hummed something in the upstairs shower, a pop song that seemed to play constantly on the radio. She used to prefer Johnny Cash. Her phone lay on the table, a brand new iPhone in a sleek turquoise case. Another recent acquisition. The old one broke, she'd explained 3 weeks earlier. Jack swiped the screen locked. 4-digit code, used to be their anniversary date. Not anymore. "Dad, can I have some ice cream?" Thomas interrupted his thoughts, poking his head into the kitchen. "It's hot outside." "Sure, soldier. Just grab your sister, too." While the children wrestled with the ice cream container, Jack asked casually, "What did you guys do last Sunday while I was at the security conference?" "We went to the circus." Sarah spun around happily, dripping vanilla ice cream onto the tile floor. "We always go on Sundays. Mr. Martinez was doing a new trick with fire rings." "Always." Jack felt a chill slide down his spine despite the Arizona heat. "Yeah," Thomas licked his spoon. "For like 3 months now. Mom says it's our special tradition." Tradition? How goddamn romantic. The children raced outside, leaving puddles of melting ice cream in their wake. Jack stood to wipe the floor, and his gaze drifted back to his wife's phone. The passcode. He thought about Martinez's birth date. Information about the circus troupe hadn't been difficult to obtain. 4 digits pressed against the screen like rounds into a chamber. The phone unlocked. That's simple. Christ, Linda, you didn't even try to hide it. The message app showed nothing suspicious. Too clean. Jack opened the deleted messages folder. There they were, dozens of exchanges with an unsaved number, brief, businesslike. Today at 7, wear something flexible. You were magnificent. And her responses, emojis, exclamation points, breathless anticipation in every word. He saved the number for later investigation. Floorboards creaked overhead, Linda emerging from the shower. The scent of her new perfume seeped through the vents. Jack quickly replaced the phone. His temples throbbed with a dull ache. Sunday morning, Linda was going shopping with the kids again. She wore a new dress, deep burgundy, form-fitting. Jack watched from the bedroom window as she helped the children into the car. Thomas was animatedly chattering, hands gesturing wildly, probably about the damned Spanish showman again. An hour later, Jack parked near Corona Circus. He stayed far enough away, donned dark sunglasses and his Diamondbacks cap. Old skills returned instantly: stay in shadows, observe, remain invisible. People streamed toward the ticket booths, the air thick with popcorn and cotton candy. A normal Sunday diversion for normal families. The show started promptly at 3. Jack sat in the last row, where he could survey the entire arena. Linda and the children settled into their usual spot, third row, center. She kept adjusting her hair and glancing around. Waiting for him, like a schoolgirl on her first date. Martinez appeared to a drum roll, all midnight blue and gold, million-dollar smile intact. His act closed the first half of the show. Fire rings, acrobatics, disappearing inside a tiger cage. Then came the trick Jack had been waiting for. And now, ladies and gentlemen, Martinez's voice echoed throughout the tent, I will prove that my feats are genuinely dangerous and require years of training. Who from the audience would like to try? Jack tensed. A man rose from the middle section, tall, lanky, wearing worn jeans and a plaid shirt. Plant, oldest trick in the book. The man awkwardly mounted the stage, attempted to perform a simple acrobatic feat, naturally failed. The audience laughed. Martinez smiled condescendingly, his entire demeanor broadcasting, see, it's not as easy as it looks. Jack studied the volunteer carefully. The man moved with calculated clumsiness, professional awkwardness, and the same plaid shirt that appeared in photos from previous performances. After the show, he followed the volunteer to the service entrance. The man disappeared into a trailer marked staff only. 15 minutes later, a different-looking person emerged, wearing a tracksuit duffel bag slung over one shoulder, but the gait remained identical. So that's the game. Same guy every Sunday, same clothes, same routine. Jack pulled out his phone and dialed his old army buddy, who now worked in immigration. Steve, it's Harrison. Remember when you said you owed me for Fallujah? I need information on a Spanish performer. Chapter 3, Preparation. In Special Forces, Jack had learned one fundamental truth. Behind every successful strike lies weeks of meticulous preparation. What was it Sergeant Wilkins used to say? Victory is forged in the shadows, soldier. Now, sitting in a rented Ford Explorer across from the circus plant's trailer, Jack felt that cold professionalism awakening inside him, the same discipline that had transformed him from an ordinary Phoenix kid into an elite operator. 7 days. You've got 7 days to plan this out, just like the old days. The man he'd been tracking turned out to be Randy Baker, professional acrobat from Denver. 34 years old, unmarried, working with Antonio Martinez for the past 4 years. Light glowed in his trailer window, a silhouette moving behind the curtain, an ordinary evening for an ordinary circus performer. Memory served up another image. Fallujah, 2006. Similar surveillance of a target, but instead of a comfortable trailer, a concrete compound. Instead of a circus costume, a suicide vest. 6 seconds of perfectly executed assault had resolved that situation. Sir, A voice crackled in his earpiece. This was Dex, a young tech wizard Jack had hired for cash through back channels. "I've compromised his phone. Want to hear the latest conversation with Martinez? Always monitor enemy communications. Basic protocol." "Go ahead." Martinez's voice, digitally compressed, sounded supremely confident. "Next Sunday must be perfect, Randy. This act is my signature. No mistakes." "Same as always, boss. Plaid shirt, jeans, glasses. I come out after the fire rings. And don't forget the limp. Audiences love clumsy everyday Joes. Walk on stage like you've got a load in your pants. Ha ha." Jack switched off the recording. His phone vibrated. Message from Linda. "Running late at PTA meeting. Don't wait up." "Lying, God almighty, you're terrible at it." He checked the GPS tracker he'd installed in her car. The red dot blinked steadily near Corona Circus. Rehearsal, that's what they called it. He wondered what Martinez would think knowing his mistress was married to a man who'd spent 8 years hunting high-value targets across the Middle East. Randy Baker exited his trailer, heading toward the communal showers. Perfect opportunity to study his movements. Jack pulled out a small notebook. Slight limp favoring right leg. Feet splayed outward approximately 15 degrees. Characteristic forward lean of upper body. Habit of touching neck every 20-30 steps. Like reading a book. You just read the man, extract the details, memorize them. Friday evening he perfected the final touches. The children were at their grandmother's. Linda delayed at yoga class, GPS again showing the circus. Jack stood before the garage mirror, replicating Baker's every movement. The walk, gestures, head tilt. Even the glasses slid down his nose in precisely the same manner. A call from his former Army comrade interrupted his practice. "Jack, got what you asked for. Schematics for Martinez's safety rig. Guys pushing limits, operating with minimal cable tolerance." "Thanks, Steve. Send the files." "Always study the enemy's vulnerabilities. Always." Saturday evening, Linda announced her plans for tomorrow. "Honey, I'm taking the kids to the circus. Final show of the season, they've been begging." She stood at the stove, stirring pasta sauce. New dress, new hairstyle, perfume also new. Jack approached from behind, embraced her waist. "Sure, sweetheart, have fun." She stiffened slightly in his arms. She used to melt into him. "Tomorrow, it all ends tomorrow." That night, he retrieved an old military duffel from its hiding place behind the water heater. Inside, fingerless gloves, elastic bandages, pain relievers, everything he might need for what he'd planned. 22 years in special forces had taught him to prepare for any contingency. At 1 in the morning, he drove to the circus. Observed as Baker returned to his trailer after the evening performance. Tomorrow afternoon, he would walk along this same path, cutting through the grove behind the parking lot. Perfect location. Isolated. One strike, quick and clean, from behind at the base of the skull, just as he'd been trained. Dawn found him recounting necessary equipment. At 2:30 p.m., he parked behind the grove. Baker appeared right on schedule, whistling something from the Eagles. Jack waited until he drew even with the explorer. One precise strike to the base of the skull. No noise, no blood. Baker's eyes simply went dark like a bulb with a severed filament. Jack caught the collapsing body, hauled it into the trunk, removed the clothes and glasses. "Sorry, friend, nothing personal. Your boss is just fucking my wife." After changing, he checked himself in the rearview mirror. Perfect. Even the glasses slid down in exactly the same way. Jack adjusted them with Baker's characteristic gesture, thumb and forefinger on the bridge. 1 hour until showtime. 1 hour before Antonio Martinez would discover his perfectly rehearsed routine was about to go dramatically off script. Chapter 4: Performance. The big top breathed like a living organism. Jack felt its pulsations while sitting in the fifth row wearing Randy Baker's clothes. The plaid shirt fabric strained across his shoulders, the real Randy being somewhat smaller in build. The zero prescription glasses created a slight distortion at the edges of his vision. Linda and the children sat 3 rows behind him, but he never once turned around. Stay focused. You're not a husband and father now. You're Randy Baker, circus stuntman. The first half of the show dragged like molasses in January. Clowns, jugglers, trained poodles, all blurred into a kaleidoscope of color. Jack noted details mechanically, as if on a mission. Positions of spotlights, angles of visibility, distances between safety points under the dome. And now, the ringmaster's voice boomed through the tent, the highlight of our program, the unparalleled master of the impossible, the man who challenges death itself, Antonio Martinez. Showtime, you Spanish son of a bitch. The performer appeared in a column of light, resplendent in midnight blue and gold, like some circus royalty. The first act with fire rings went flawlessly. The audience gasped as he dove through flaming hoops, executing a double somersault mid-leap. Jack noticed Linda digging her fingernails into the armrests. And now, ladies and gentlemen, Martinez swept his gaze across the audience, I will demonstrate that my feats truly require years of rigorous training. Who among you dares to attempt them? Your cue, soldier. Jack stood up, swaying slightly, exactly as Randy would have done. The characteristic gait with a subtle, limp, nervous adjustment of glasses, total immersion in the role, as he'd been taught in covert operations. Ah, a brave volunteer, Martinez threw his hands up theatrically. And what is your name, sir? Randy. He injected the right amount of uncertainty into his voice. Mounting the stage, Jack felt the familiar adrenaline surge. Like before a hostile compound breach, like before jumping from a helicopter. Time slowed, details sharpened. He noticed how Martinez's mouth twitched slightly when he extended his hand in greeting. Something's off, isn't it? Don't recognize your stooge. Let's start with something simple. Martinez pointed to a low trapeze. Pull yourself up and do a forward flip. Allow me to demonstrate. The acrobat leapt onto the apparatus with feline grace, executed the element flawlessly. The audience applauded. Jack approached the trapeze, feigning awkwardness. From the corner of his eye, he caught Linda leaning forward. Then his body remembered everything. 22 years of military training doesn't simply vanish. He replicated Martinez's trick with the same fluidity, adding a complex dismount from classified special forces training. A surprised murmur rippled through the tent. Martinez's smile faltered. Impressive, he quickly recovered. But that was merely a warm-up, now for something more challenging. The next 10 minutes evolved into an unspoken duel. Each feat Martinez demonstrated, Jack repeated with military precision, adding his own flourishes. Somersault with a twist. Make it a double. Handstand. How about a one-handed handstand walk across the tightrope? The audience no longer knew whom to applaud more enthusiastically. Jack observed sweat pouring down Martinez's face, not just from physical exertion. Losing control, Spanish showman. This is just the beginning. Bravo, simply bravo. Martinez clapped his hands, but his eyes blazed with fury. I must confess, you've surprised me. Perhaps you also come from a circus family, haha. No, Jack allowed himself a small smile. Just do my morning calisthenics. Doctor said it's good for my arthritis. He deliberately turned so the spotlight reflected off his glasses, momentarily revealing his eyes. Martinez visibly flinched. Recognition. He must have recognized him. Surely he'd seen family photos on Linda's phone. And now, Martinez raised his arms toward the circus dome, his voice resonating over the hushed arena. I will present my signature act. Something incredible, something beyond human limits. A structure slowly rose toward the dome, its mere sight causing the audience to gasp. Two parallel cables 15 meters high, with rotating fire rings suspended between them. From below, it resembled the gates to perdition. For this feat, Martinez spread his arms dramatically, even our brave volunteer must admit defeat. This requires years of preparation, nerves of steel, and, he paused theatrically, absolute fearlessness. With all due respect to your persistence, I will accept your withdrawal without mockery. Swallowed the bait, Spanish clown. Now watch how professionals work. Jack rose slowly. In the spotlight, his figure cast a giant shadow across the circus dome. Why not? His voice rang unexpectedly clear and steady. Let's try it. A surprised murmur swept through the stands. Martinez momentarily lost his rehearsed smile. This is far too dangerous for an audience member. Don't play the hero. You've already earned your share of glory today. For an amateur, Jack began slowly climbing the steps to the arena. Let's make this more interesting. He stopped a meter from Martinez. You and I simultaneously, on parallel cables. But there's safety equipment only for. We'll do it without safety gear, Jack said so quietly that spectators in the front rows leaned forward. None whatsoever. No harness. Consider it a challenge. Martinez paled. Under the spotlights, sweat droplets on his forehead glistened like diamonds. This is madness, he whispered through barely moving lips. Afraid, Jack deliberately raised his voice so the entire audience could hear. The great Antonio Martinez afraid to perform his signature act. Is that why you fled Spain? Or, he paused, was it all just a trick, an illusion with a planted audience member? A rumble spread through the tent. Someone in the upper rows whistled derisively. Martinez flinched as if slapped. His eyes darted between the high cables and Jack's face. You don't understand, he began, but Jack interrupted. Then explain, right now, before all these people who came to witness real magic. He gestured toward the hushed audience. Or climb up there and prove you're genuinely who you claim to be, that you're selling tickets to a show only you can perform. Absolute silence fell. One could hear the flames crackling in the torches. Jack noticed from his peripheral vision how Linda clutched the armrests. The children watched the arena, mouths agape. Martinez slowly removed his gold-embroidered jacket. His hands trembled almost imperceptibly. Very well, he said through clenched teeth. You asked for this. Oh yes, exactly this, and more. Jack removed the glasses, carefully folded them, and handed them to an assistant. Two men began ascending the ladders toward the cables, one with the grace of a predator, the other with the mechanical precision of a soldier. Both knew this ascent would change everything. Chapter 5. Above the ring. The circus dome loomed above them like an inverted abyss. Jack felt the hot air from the spotlight searing his skin, while cold sweat trickled down his spine like melting ice. Beside him, on the parallel platform, Antonio Martinez no longer looked so dazzling. His gold-trimmed costume had dulled in the harsh light, his smile transformed into a nervous grimace. Scared bastard, this is just the beginning. 15 meters of emptiness below their feet. Two cables, taut as guitar strings, between them, 3 fire rings rotating with hypnotic slowness. Flames licked the metal hoops like demons awaiting sacrifice. Ladies and gentlemen, the ringmaster's voice trembled with tension. For the first time in Corona Circus history, a double high-wire walk without safety equipment. The unparalleled Master Antonio and an unnamed audience member. The crowd below froze, transformed into a single organism with 1,000 eyes. Jack caught Linda's gaze. She sat in the third row, clutching the children's shoulders, her face whiter than chalk. First step onto the cable. The metal wire vibrated beneath his foot, sending tremors through his entire body. Martinez moved simultaneously, two men connected by an invisible thread of fate. Beautiful evening for a stroll, Jack spoke so quietly that only Martinez heard. The acrobat flinched, his foot momentarily losing rhythm. Something's wrong, he muttered, balancing on the wire. Everything's wrong. Jack took another step, approaching the first fire ring. Know what I felt every goddamn Sunday when my wife came home reeking of your cologne. Martinez froze as if struck by lightning. His eyes widened with terrified recognition. Dear God, you're her husband, Linda's husband. The name echoed through the silent tent. Somewhere below came Linda's strangled cry. Bingo, Jack bared his teeth in a smile. But it's not God you need right now, it's the devil, because you and I are about to dance in the inferno. First jump through the fire ring. The flames roared as two bodies sliced through almost synchronously. Jack landed lightly, as if he'd walked tightropes all his life. Martinez stumbled, beads of sweat breaking out on his forehead. Listen, this isn't what he began, but Jack cut him off. Shut up, his voice thundered under the dome like a gunshot. Remember the first day she came to your trailer? Did you know she had a husband and children at home? Did you know I was protecting people like you while you were entertaining yourself with my wife? The second ring approached inexorably. Jack leapt, spinning in the air with predatory grace. Martinez followed, but his movements had lost their former precision. She told me you no longer, the Spaniard gasped. That I no longer loved her, Jack laughed, and his laughter made even seasoned circus performers shudder. So you were saving her from the evil husband, the hero of some goddamn romance novel. The third ring blazed ahead like the gateway to hell. The most difficult trick, a jump with a 360-degree turn. Know what I did to your friend Randy, Jack hissed, preparing for the jump. The one whose clothes I'm wearing. He won't wake up for quite some time. And do you know what's going to happen to you after this performance? Martinez stumbled. His eyes widened with horror as he realized he was losing balance. No, please, he whispered. In Fallujah, Jack's voice became icily calm. I learned many interesting things. For instance, how to make a man beg for death. These were the last words Martinez heard. His foot slipped from the cable, his body contorting in midair like a broken marionette. The scream caught in his throat when he realized there was no safety net. The sound of his fall resembled a canvas tearing. Linda screamed, piercing, terrified. Jack, without breaking stride, conquered the final fire ring and calmly proceeded toward the ladder. Below, panic erupted. People shouted, children cried. Linda ran into the ring, fell to her knees beside the motionless body. Her burgundy dress looked blood-red under the spotlights. Jack descended the ladder, feeling icy calm spreading through his body. Behind him, the fire rings burned out, and with them, the last remnants of his former life. Mission accomplished, Sergeant. Target neutralized. Operation complete. Now he only had to wait for the police to arrive. He knew what they would find in Martinez's trailer, knew what questions they would ask, and knew exactly what he would answer. Because sometimes justice doesn't arrive in a courtroom. Sometimes it comes under a circus dome, 15 meters above the ground, where even the devil gets vertigo. Chapter 6, Aftermath. Ambulance sirens tore through the night silence, painting the Corona Circus walls with pulsating red and blue. Jack stood in the shadows by the service entrance, watching paramedics load Martinez onto a stretcher. The Spaniard had survived, somehow managing to twist his body mid-fall. But even from this distance, Jack could see that his left leg was bent at an unnatural angle. Compound fracture, might never stand on a high wire again. Life has its ironies. Linda rushed between the stretcher and the children, who huddled together at the tent entrance. Thomas held his sister protectively, trying to appear strong, but his lower lip trembled. Sarah cried silently into her brother's shoulder. Will Mr. Martinez be okay? The girl's voice quivered like an autumn leaf. Linda froze between the children and the stretcher, a woman torn in two. Her new dress was stained with arena dust, her makeup streaked with tears. She looked a decade older. There's the price of lies. Look closely, dear. Mom, Thomas suddenly straightened, his voice hardening, sounding remarkably like his father's. Why are you crying over him? It was just an accident, right? Jack watched his wife flinch. The 9-year-old boy had asked the question that cut deeper than any knife. Linda faltered, her eyes scanning the arena desperately for salvation, and then she saw him. Jack stepped from the shadows. He still wore Randy Baker's clothes, but his bearing had changed. Rigid military posture, the gaze of a man accustomed to giving orders. The children froze, recognizing yet not recognizing their father. "Dad," Sarah whispered, "but how?" "Quiet, princess." His voice was calm, almost gentle. "The adults need to talk." Linda stepped toward him, her hands extended as if trying to ward off a blow. "Jack, I can explain." "Explain," he laughed, and the sound made the circus workers gathered around shiver. "What exactly do you want to explain, sweetheart? How you brought our children to watch your lover perform? How you used them to cover your dirty little affair?" "I didn't." She stopped short, realizing the children could hear everything. "Mom," Thomas's voice contained new notes, disbelief, hurt, anger. "You and Mr. Martinez." "No," Linda spun toward her son. "Thomas, honey, this isn't what." "Don't," Jack stepped forward, his voice cutting the air like a whip. "Don't you dare lie to them again. Enough. They're old enough to know the truth." Sarah began sobbing loudly. Thomas stood motionless, his small fists clenched so tightly the knuckles turned white. "I've been watching you for 3 months," Jack spoke quietly now, almost intimately. "Every Sunday, saw you disappearing into his trailer, coming back happy, flushed. While I worked security protecting other families, you were destroying ours." Whispers spread through the circus. Workers, spectators, casual passers-by, all frozen, unwitting witnesses to one family's collapse. "Dad," Thomas suddenly appeared at his side, eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Is that why you were up there? Did you deliberately?" "No, son," Jack placed his hand on the boy's shoulder. "I just showed Señor Martinez that his tricks aren't so special, that any man can do the same. He just couldn't handle the pressure." "You could have killed him," Linda whispered. "And you killed our family," Jack countered. "Which is worse?" The paramedics finished loading Martinez into the ambulance. The Spaniard was conscious, his groans carried across the hushed arena. Linda instinctively moved toward the ambulance but stopped, catching her daughter's gaze. "Mommy," Sarah's voice sounded unnaturally adult, "don't you love Daddy anymore?" That simple question hung in the air like smoke. Linda opened her mouth but couldn't produce a sound. Tears streamed down her cheeks, smearing what remained of her mascara. "Children," Jack stood at his full height. "Go to the car, Dad's taking you home." "What about Mom?" Sarah clutched his arm. "Mom has some thinking to do." He fixed his wife with a hard stare. "And I believe she should spend tonight at her sister's place." Thomas took his sister's hand and led her toward the exit. He didn't look back, just like his father when departing for a mission. Linda remained standing in the middle of the arena, a small, broken figure in a soiled dress. Jack turned to leave but paused. "You know what's the most damning part? Not that you cheated on me, but that you used our children as cover. That I will never forgive." He strode toward the exit where his children waited. Behind him, he heard his wife sobbing, but he didn't turn back. Randy Baker's glasses still rested in his jeans pocket, the final evidence of today's performance. Curtain call, ladies and gentlemen. The show is over. In darkness, the Corona Circus resembled a wounded beast. Its striped sides trembled in the wind, while in the dome, the dying embers of fire rings still flickered, silent witnesses to how one lie can destroy an entire world. Life after that night at the circus would never be the same. The divorce proceedings were swift and quiet. Linda didn't fight for joint custody. Perhaps shame proved stronger than maternal instinct, or maybe she simply couldn't face Thomas and Sarah after everything that had happened. The children chose to stay with their father. "At least he never lied to us," Thomas said during the hearing, and those words sounded like the final nail in the coffin of their once happy family. Antonio Martinez vanished from their lives as suddenly as he had appeared. After the fall, doctors pieced his left leg back together, but returning to the circus was out of the question. When police investigated the incident, they discovered discrepancies in his documentation. As it turned out, his work visa had long expired. The deportation proceeded quickly and quietly, another small performance, this time in a courtroom. Rumors suggested that upon returning to Seville, he found work as a bartender in a tourist trap. The subsequent fate of the man who nearly destroyed the Harrison family was lost somewhere in the labyrinth of European anonymity. Sometimes, while tucking the children into bed, Jack reflected that vengeance occasionally comes from the most unexpected sources. After all, every performance must have a finale, and it doesn't always end with applause.